What's up, everybody, and welcome to the number one Group of Five college football show in the world. This is the Group of Five guys, and our mission is to be the voice for the Group of Five football programs, the voice that the mainstream sports media absolutely refuses to be. We need your help to do that. We need you to hit the follow button on all the social media platforms at Group of Five guys. Go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your best podcasts. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a 5-star rating, leave a review and a comment, and most importantly, share it with your family and friends. On this episode of Inside Drill, we dive deep into the world of NIL, transfer portal, collectives, and the future of college football with Chuck Carson of the Trojans Together Collective down at Troy. Hope you enjoy the show. All right, guys, as we try to get some clarity, get some understanding, get some education on NIL, on transfer portal, on everything, college football, NCAA, administrative stuff, we got to bring in an expert. And this is a guy that we talk to quite often, off the air, but unbeknownst to me, this will be the first time we've talked to him on the air. Chuck Carson of the Trojans Together Collective, which, of course, is the Troy Athletic Department collective. Chuck, first time coming on. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
What a pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. It's going to be great.
Well, guys, and before we get into the show, Chuck, I mean this, and we've talked, again, off the air and stuff like that. Chuck has been one of the most supportive just people overall to this whole thing. We met Chuck one time in the parking lot of the Troy spring game, 4 years ago, maybe. John Summerall's first spring at Troy. And since then, we've developed a really good friendship, and Chuck's a guy we can always lean on for these questions. Well, we decided to let the world in on the mind of somebody that I think gets it. I think understands every leg and tentacle of the NCAA at this moment. So Chuck, I guess 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot, like what is happening and what changes are we about to see here in the next, couple of weeks, couple of months?
Yeah, a super high flyover here. I mean, NIL born, 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I guess. And you had the intersection of a very slow-moving entity in the NCAA, and really all the institutions, higher ed, moves slow. It's not necessarily a critique. It's just a fact. It's just a slow-moving entity. And you had this intersection between that type of entity and that speed of entity with a very fast-moving business world. And use the analogy like two gears in a gearbox, if you're of the appropriate age to know what driving a stick shift is like. When those gears aren't timed up correctly and the fast gear and the slow gear meet, there's some grinding that happens, some uncomfortable noise, some shaking, and just general confusion about what's happening. But eventually those things get lined up, they get in the right place, and eventually you wind up either going faster or moving forward more efficiently, which is my hope, that of all the the uncertainty in the environment right now, that some of this is beginning to become more clear. And I think the more clarity we can get from the power brokers of the college athletics world, the better off we're going to be, and the sooner. And primarily, I mean, I've told you guys this before we hopped on the air, just the idea that from my vantage point, what I think I can help convey is, what is this like for players, and then what is this like for fans? The fans are the ones, to me, that are kind of out in the cold and the last to know a lot of times about what's going on. You have a lot of inside conversation, a lot of, club type conversation inside of higher ed institutions. They don't share a lot of information, and I get why. I understand that. You have players and coaches and programs that kind of work their process, and the fans are really the last to know. They're the last to know about transfer portal. They're the last to know about everything. Really always are. Schedules, all those things. I mean, we are still waiting for the Sun Belt schedule to come out, and whatever. It's frustrating sometimes as a fan to be on that end of it. And so I think one of the opportunities that's out there for collectives, for folks like you guys, is to shed some light on that for the fans so that they understand it better. We still hear a reasonable amount of pushback against NIL and the portal. Those two things are not the same. That's really one of the first things we always say. People probably dislike the portal more than they dislike NIL. And so in a nutshell, you had this big monstrosity, this Pandora's box that was opened a few years ago. We're trying to work out inside the box what it's going to look like. And I think there's some good things coming down the road. At least I'm choosing to be optimistic about it and hope that everybody's going to wind up on the same page, still cheering for their team, still enjoying players wearing their alma mater's logo on it, running around the field of the court. I think that's still the model for college athletics moving forward, but we've got a lot of work to do still.
Well, what is the biggest misconception, right? Because I think we talked the other day, the average fan, I think, thinks, X player, X quarterback at this school has a good season and, big brand school slides in the DM, offers them $5 million and they transfer. But we know that's not the norm. That's the outlier. Those guys, the Carson Becks of the world, right? That everybody's familiar with. So what's the biggest misconception you think that the fans think that's not actually the case with NIL or portal or both?
Probably that the portal is wilder than it is, which is kind of a crazy statement to make because it's pretty wild. But that everybody is just a free agent all the time. That can be true. I've shared with you guys on social media some receipts from some folks that have, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm a player agent, or I'm a finder of somebody like that, and I've got players ready. And if you need players, let me know." And that stuff happens. It's not the way it's supposed to happen. It's not the right way to do it. It does happen, but it's not the norm, as you mentioned, Matt. It's really an outlier. I think it'd be hard to put my finger on one thing. I think the idea that NIL and the transfer portal are the same thing, I think, is an early point of education. They are not the same thing. Name, image, and likeness is the opportunity for a student athlete to be compensated for something that has value, right? And there are a lot of ways to do that. There are a lot of different ways that student athletes can deliver tasks. We call them deliverables in the NIL world that means something. That means something for us, corporate sponsors that want to use those student athletes to promote their brand. There's a number of ways that student athletes identify and capitalize on NIL. Transfer portal is completely different. Transfer portal is the means by which a player gets from one institution to the other. And that one for me is the one that would be, it would bring the most clarity, the quickest to the conversation, and be the best for players and fans.
Now, do you see anything on the horizon as far as regulations go, as far as the transfer portal? Because to me, it seems like that's the biggest problem right now is kids can transfer basically whenever they want for the most part. And then you add NIL on top of it, which that's where we've seen, the outliers of the crazy free agent situations where, agents are basically shopping players around without their permission. And then they go to them after the fact. Like there's been so many crazy scenarios that we've seen on social media, but are there any regulations that you know of that are coming down the pike, hopefully?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's probably coming is a change to the transfer portal windows. I think you could see it going from 2 in football to 1. I think they've got to work out when that is. Is that, right after the national championship game? Is that a staggered approach? You've got somewhat of a staggered approach now. You've got, if your coach leaves, there's carve outs. If you're still playing, there's carve outs. Then there's a primary window. But I think you're going to see, hope you're going to see some clarity and voices coming together around what the right time for a portal is. I think everybody recognizes that it's okay for players to be able to change. There are tons of legitimate reasons for that. But doing that in an orderly fashion that makes sense, that's fair across the board, has been harder to find that common ground. I think that's one of the first things that you'll see. Certainly the House settlement is a big one right now. The NCAA is involved in that. The courts are involved. They're working on deciding right now. It's April. They'll get kind of a preliminary or a final ruling on the House settlement, whether it's going to be approved. And then if it is, July 1 would be the go date. And so you're going to have some changes associated with the House settlement. There's going to be some revenue sharing that can happen that'll start then with institutions with a cap on it. You're going to see a clearinghouse for NIL deals. So folks like us, collectives that do deals with student athletes, we're going to have to run those deals through a clearinghouse. Deloitte is going to run that for the NCAA. That one's got a lot of chatter around it. There are a lot of people that are very, very unhappy with that idea and very confused about enforcement around it. That's going to be kind of the next one that drops. And there's probably already, there is already litigation that's getting ready to be dropped when that thing goes live, if it does go live in the House settlement.
So what are people upset about with that?
So the idea is that clearinghouse is going to have to approve any NIL deal that is valued at $600 or more. And what they're going to have to approve is basically, is that deal commensurate with a fair market value? Well, we all know fair market value, especially in a space that is as young as NIL, is incredibly difficult to ascertain with any kind of consistency. And so what does that look like? Are we going to hear no more often than yes? And then right now, the idea is that deal is going to get done, the contract signed, and presumably even some money paid out. And then that clearinghouse is going to come back and give us an answer on the back end, which makes no sense either. So there's a lot of confusion. There's not a lot of specificity yet on that idea, and everybody's very interested in what that might look like. You talk to a lot of people in the NIL space, and they tell you very, very quick a range of responses from it's dead on arrival to going to have a significant number of legal challenges. I don't talk to very many people that think, hey, that's a great idea. So that one's probably going to be one early on that gets challenged. And our hope, at least from our perspective, is that there is some greater latitude with what we do, and we don't have Big Brother looking over our shoulder to do that. And I get why there needs to be consistency. I get why there needs to be an even playing field. Certainly, we all agree with that. Getting down to the micromanagement level of collective deals at $600 or more appears to be a bit extreme.
Yeah, and just going based off of what big institutions already try and regulate and what the NCAA tries to do, I don't see how they're going to be able to do that with any type of efficiency, right? I mean, everything they do right now takes forever. So, I'm just curious to see how that.
Yeah, it's a very archaic infrastructure at the NCAA. It's a very bloated bureaucracy in a lot of respects. Their history has not been good in terms of being proactive with ideas or concepts. They've just been a little bit late and tardy to the evolution as college athletics continues to move on. And so that's cost them a lot of credibility. It's cost them, a lot of time, a lot of money, which is membership fees, by the way. That's institutions that pay that money. And they're either going to have to figure it out, or they're going to get overlooked or passed by or pushed to the side. And their biggest problem right now is they don't own their own football, their national championship playoff in football. It's their biggest problem. They don't own it. And if they didn't own the men's basketball championship and the women's basketball championship, they would have been done a while back. And watch for, I know we're talking about football here, watch what happens in basketball. Rick Pitino today said that, hey, this environment around NIL and transfer portal looks like the Euro League in basketball, and he's not wrong about that. There's a lot of transactions, a lot of movements, a lot of new acquisitions in the offseason, one-year contracts, just a ton of movement between teams. And he's looking at it saying, there's a model out there for what we have now, but nobody likes that in the U.S., and so we're going to have to figure out something that looks a little different. So watch basketball, watch the hoops, folks, and if they start making noise with the NCAA, you're going to see some things happen that maybe 5 years ago we thought would never happen.
I was just going back to the clearinghouse stuff, and I can't get it out of my mind, so I got to say it. It's like what I foresee happening is the $600 deal where a lineman goes to the local wing place and whatever does an event for $600, that'll get shot down and somebody will lose scholarships and bowl eligibility. And then, Georgia will pay somebody $3 million and give them a Lambo for fun. And that'll get right on by the clearinghouse, approved, passed, no problem at all. That's what'll really happen.
Matt, your skepticism is showing. You're, yeah, we understand. And look, again, we understand the idea that we don't want an environment where anybody can pay anything for any player at any time. That model has not worked well really in any area of athletics, professional, amateur, or the like. So we understand the need for some parameters, but how to do that. And it's, for me, it's very odd that the NCAA, as slow as they've been to the gun on this whole evolution, all of a sudden it just appears to me they're playing catch up and kind of sticking their nose deeper into it than it needs to be. There's always been a rule book. There always needs to be a rule book. Okay, we've got to understand what the rules are and do our best to play within them. There's got to be enforcement. Everybody gets that. How we do that, that's the gears in the gearbox right now grinding against each other, and we're not quite synced up yet. We'll get there, though.
So, we talked about this on one of our previous episodes about how expensive it's become for a fan just to be a fan. Yeah. And, I'd love to get your take on, how you see NIL collectives really need to be funded. Like, I think it's going to be more corporate dollars because most booster clubs are already hitting up your average everyday fan. So what's kind of your philosophy on how a collective should be built and typically where that money should come from? Should it come from the individual fan, or should it be targeted more about the corporate side of things?
Yes and yes. That's really always been the answer in college athletics, that it's all hands on deck. Certainly this opens up it has opened up a new, revenue stream for athletes, but the funding source for that stream is the same. It's especially early on. I think ADs are kind of coming to grips with this now, but early on, especially, I almost would wonder about an AD if he didn't have some paranoia about NIL and it being a place where it robbed from Peter to pay Paul and so forth. So that's evolving too and getting better. And there's good partnerships and collectives. We try to have that with our athletic partner here best we can. And, we try to partner with them on things where we can. The rules have relaxed, thankfully. And so we're able to do more now with athletics directly. And there's, House is going to really throw the door open a lot more to allowing athletics to be involved directly in that. And I think, Jeff, to your point, I think for fans, I don't know necessarily that it's about the price, because the price of things has always gone up. You bought tickets 25 years ago for a very, very different price than you buy them today. And you're going to buy them 25 years from now at a very different price too. That's not it. It's not. I heard a guy one time say, in the absence of value, price is an issue. And so what is it that the fans are getting for that price? Are they getting a game experience? Are they getting interaction with student athletes that they couldn't have before because of NIL? Likely, yes. Is the value that's in that price worth it to the fan? And that's good old-fashioned business right there. That's marketing, price points, that's all the basics. And that's still there. That's been around in college athletics. It'll still be around. I don't think the price, it does not appear, at least so far, that the rising price of participating in college athletics as a fan, as a donor, as a corporate sponsor, that has really scared that many people off. There are more people that are answering the call for what most ADs have said, which is we need you to do more. And that's the environment we're in. And if we're going to win, we got to do more together to get there. And so far, people are getting there.
What do you think, like the extent? I mean, we're so early in this, but, in my mind, I go to, how long am I willing to continue giving year after year if we're not getting the results that I'm being sold? Because look, one team is going to win the national championship. 9 teams are going to win the conference championship. There's 140 or whatever it is now. So if I'm, fortunately for Troy, you guys have won a couple of them in the last few years. But other than that, in the Sun Belt, everybody's donating to NIL and they're not winning. So what do you think the extent is until fans say, nah, this ain't working, I'm done giving?
No different than it is now. That we've been asking fans to pay higher ticket prices, give more to the foundation. We've been doing that for years, and everybody kind of finds that point at which, the AD starts getting calls, the development folks start getting calls and say, hey, I can't give anymore to what the product we got isn't working. I think that'll always be the case. I don't think that's going to change. I think the bigger question for fans, and this is really if I had a passion point around this, given my background and former life in college athletics, I think if I was still in college athletics, I would be laser focused on helping our fans understand what we are doing with the funds they are providing. Again, I think they have to understand value of what the value of what they're giving and the value of what our student athletes are getting, right? And then you put all that together in terms of the product on the field. I think if there's value there, people continue to give to that value. I think when you either don't demonstrate it or can't demonstrate that there's good value for the dollar somebody's providing, I think you're going to see people start to tighten the purse strings up. That's really no different than it's always been. It is just especially important in the environment we're in now to bring fans into the conversation, help them understand what's going on, and make them part of it. I'll give you a great example of this. The NFL is a great testing ground for this. Think about all the different things that happen with players, the team, the franchise itself, the brand. Think about all the moving parts that happen from one season to the other. And you've got fans out there that understand things like contracts and extensions and salary cap and franchise tags, right? Because those fans understand that, they're more engaged than ever in the process in the NFL. There is a huge opportunity in college athletics, in my view, to help people understand what those processes are, understand why money goes where. Obviously, you can't open the books for everybody. I get that. There's a limit. But there is space in there for fans to understand better why some of these decisions are being made and what value we're getting out of the money that's being allocated and where it's being allocated. And I think that creates buy-in and more dollars for your program, not less.
Yeah, I mean, I think transparency is key. When people understand where every dollar is going, even if it doesn't necessarily work, but they understand the plan that's in place, I think it just, builds a level of confidence for sure.
Yeah.
Now, give us a little insight on the player side of things. What's it like to be a player nowadays, getting contacted by these agents? I mean, we talk about it all the time, how much bad information and bad advice is being given. Just kind of dive into what your experience has been with some of the players that you guys have had.
Well, I'll start with a hot one here. Agents. Let's just start there, right? So that one's been all over the news, in this off season, this off cycle, and most of it negative. Fans have really reacted quickly and negatively to the idea of an agent being involved in their best players leaving and going to another program, especially when some of the dollar amounts or the percentages get thrown around. You hear numbers like 15 and 20% of contract values. Well, if you're an agent, I mean, here's the logical thought. If you're a fan, okay, you're an agent, you're getting paid 15 or 20% of whatever this player makes if they leave. Okay, then are you an innocent bystander in this? Are you somebody that can give unbiased advice in this? And the common thought is, no, you can't. Are there ones out there that can? Sure. But are they? From a fan's viewpoint, none of them are, especially if they're leaving your program and going somewhere else. Okay. So how do we help that? Well, again, Jeff, back to your point of transparency. I got a phone call. It's a cool story. I got a phone call from somebody in a state legislature. Okay. I won't say which state, but I got somebody from a call. They said, hey, we just got out of a working group with some folks in Washington, D.C., and we're trying to put together some rules and regulations around these agents, right? And it was a very negative connotation to the idea of agent. And we want to cap how much an agent can make, and we want to put these rules and regulations on them so they can't make so much money off these kids. And what do you think about that? I said, hey, I'm really not for that. I'm really never ever for government telling somebody how much they can make. I prefer the free market to do that. So here's what I would recommend. If you had to legislate something, okay, if you had to have a rulemaking body come and say this has to happen when a player leaves one institution and goes to the other, here's what I'd tell you. One sheet of paper, okay? And on that sheet of paper, on one side, is the deal that you're getting at your current school, whatever they're willing to offer you, okay? And it's a gross amount at the top, and then you distill that number down for things like federal tax, state tax. You're a 1099 employee for NIL, so you pay both sides of Social Security. the Medicare surcharge, and then an agent fee. Then you do the same thing on the other side of the paper for the new school. And you have the gross amount, federal taxes, all the way down to still an agent fee. And then at the bottom of both sides, you get a net number. And that's great for the athletes to understand that they don't have, by and large, they don't have that understanding of what that net number is. We have seen, not with our own eyes here, but we have seen it happen in other places where, especially early in NIL, people left in the portal and they went and got, went from a G5 school getting six figures somewhere at a P5 school, right? And they get to tax time and we're not sure how they're going to pay their taxes because nobody told them that they're, number one, they're single, most of them, and the tax brackets for a single taxpayer go up quicker than a married taxpayer. You get into some high tax brackets quick when you earn money in NIL. And so we saw kids go do some things and buy some things and allocate some money somewhere. And we got a tax bill coming because you're a 1099 employee. We're not withholding that taxes. We're paying it to you. You owe it at the end. So April comes around, it's tax time, and we got a tax bill. And hey, where's that money coming from? Right. And when you don't know those things, when they're not transparent to the athlete, I think that's a problem. And I told this person at the state legislature, I said, hey, if you want to legislate something, legislate that every single athlete that has to transfer in the portal signs that disclosure document. It doesn't even have to be public necessarily. They just need to see it. Yeah. And what it also does, going back to agents, is it puts that agent fee out in the public, so to speak, with players. It helps them understand what agents are charging what, and you begin to build a base case for what are the services that go along with being an agent. So in the NFL, for example, if you're an agent and you're negotiating your deal with the club itself, that fee is 3 or 4% in that ballpark. Now, if that agent goes out and gets a sponsorship deal from a corporation and brings it to the player, that's when the fee goes up to 15 or 20%, right? Well, a lot of these guys are just negotiating as agents the deal with the next school. In the NFL model, that's a much lower agent fee than going and getting the deal from XYZ corporation to come be a brand ambassador. So we've got some transparency issues for the players that I think need to happen. I think the more the players can understand that, the more educated of a decision they can make. Because look, there's a big difference between going and to a school in California or New York or Massachusetts and paying a state tax, income tax as a single taxpayer, versus going to a state that pays no income tax. Is one reason why you're starting to see states now have bills that exempt NIL from state income taxes because they want that level playing field between states. But there's a big, big difference. I mean, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on where you go and what the deal is. So we need more of that transparency for the players. And again, I think that trickles down to the fans. I think they can get more engaged in the process, understand why players move and what the pace is and what the rules are around it. Everybody can calm down a little bit and begin to get back to enjoying a sport that they love.
How do we educate the players and the players circle? Because a lot of times we talk about that all the time. A lot of times the players just have so many influences in their ear, and most everybody's uneducated. I mean, look, we sit here and talk about this every week on a show, and I still, am uneducated about it.
Yeah.
So your one-page document, it seems so simple, right? It seems so obvious. I mean, but why is that not happening, or how do we make it happen everywhere?
Yeah, power and money. I mean, that's kind of runs things. I mean, that's a tale as old as time there. So, I always tell people, I've heard people complain for years about, back to the BCS days and, all the versions of playoff or not playoff that we've had. And I've told people for years, once they get the money right, it'll happen, and so that's what's going to happen here too. We got to figure out the money on this thing first. But Matt, I think a lot of it, I think the collectives have a role in that. I think some collectives do a better job than others. I think the institutions more and more now that they can touch it and be involved in it and even own it are going to have a big, big role in educating athletes, helping them understand. I mean, I think about what we all grew up with, the Champs Life Skills stuff, right? The that type of stuff now more and more and more is going to need to involve financial resources, financial education, understanding basics about tax, even legal. What are the resources I have out there? Our athletic department is going to bring in-house counsel that can then counsel somebody on contract language and the financial piece of it and all that. So I think there are people out there in the higher ed world at the institution level, but also at the collective level that I think would benefit. There'd be a good return on investment if they decided that that's going to be a major prong of what they do. It's good for athletes. It's good for everybody involved. Anytime you give people the tools they need to make really great decisions, you wind up with a much better product at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, you go back to Jeff, right? Todd and everybody, you have all the making sure your credits all the academic advisors. And nowadays, you probably need that even more so when going to a new school every other semester. But now, yeah, I mean, there's got to be somebody in the building that can, at Troy, you can do it, but not everybody's got a very good collective, if any. You're seeing general managers now at a lot of the places. I think that's part of it. But I mean, I feel like we need to see more staff on this side of things.
Yeah.
Especially as long as we have the agents that we have.
And there are some ways to get to that are outside of the institutions and the collectives. I think you're going to see a lot of movement in the future on employment. And what does that mean? Are athletes employees? First question. Second question, who is their employer if they are? And my opinion would be institutions and higher ed institutions are not a very good place for that base to be as an employer. Football, could that be the college football playoff? Could there be another entity in and of itself? Is the NCAA the right one? That's a matter of taste, and for me, it doesn't taste very good. I'd like to see somebody that's proven a little bit more in the business world to be able to be an employer. They're going to have some responsibility as an employer in an employer-employee relationship to help understand. They're going to have some resources that they can bring to bear for the employees, right? So that will help. If you go so far as the professional model, there's collective bargaining. There's a NFL Players Association, and there's agents that are approved by the NFLPA. And so you have agents that have to abide by a certain code of conduct, right? And so there are some ways out there to bring those resources to bear that just don't rest on the institutions or the NCAA. And I think we'd be wise to explore as many of those options as we can.
Well, Chuck, before we let you go, a couple last things. Obviously nobody has a crystal ball and knows where college football as a whole is headed. But if you had to just kind of give your take on, Power Four, Group of Five, and like all of it, just an overarching view, where's college football headed in your opinion? Do you see a break off between a handful of programs and the Group of Five, or do you think it's all going to be reshuffled and restructured at some point?
Yeah, so one thing that'll get you in trouble is, you guys know I'm a financial advisor. That's actually what pays the bills, not the collective. And, the minute you start getting really, really certain about things is about the minute you get humbled. And so, opinions are kind of that way too. And so that's the caveat for anything that I'm about to say. But I think there is a growing trend of understanding that there is a very highly resourced version of college athletics that doesn't apply to every single institution. And there has to be a way to work that out in some way. And so it could be that one of those kind of natural things that happen is you do see a break off, you do see a professional or semi-professional model take hold, and then you've got whatever's left. How do you structure that, and what does it look like? And again, at the end of the day, I still think we're going to have players wearing jerseys with logos on them from schools we graduated from and we love deeply, and we want to invest our time and our energy and resource in. I think that's still going to happen regardless of what the model looks like. But I do think you're going to have this new evolution, this new era in college athletics is going to make it look different from a business standpoint. And I think there is some momentum around that idea of a break off or a split of some sort. We don't know what that'll look like, and I'd hesitate to even get too deep into it. But some things that I could see happen. I think employment probably happens at some point, in some way, shape, or form. I think that's coming. I think once you get employment, we already see this. We have salary cap right now, okay? But once you get employment, if you get collective bargaining, you also get salary minimums. And then you get to figure out who's going to opt in to that system of salary minimums, which probably hits the group of five question a little bit more. So if we know the cap's up here and we say, hey, look, your typical G5 school is not going to hit that cap, but they can still opt into the system. Well, what if there's a floor on it? Now you got a different question where you have to come to the table with a minimum amount of resources to be eligible to be in that system and in that competitive box. So I think you're going to have that question down the road. I am rarely ever intrigued by the sport of soccer. I count it as one of the lesser sports in my view, and I'm not from a place that's a big metro area. I didn't grow up with it. And so I kind of bust on soccer sometimes, but I'll tell you something that those folks got right, and it's the idea of relegation and the idea that you can move between levels based on your performance. And there's performance incentives for achieving, and there's performance incentives for continuing to maintain performance, and there's additional resources that come with that. And I think college football would be absolutely a blast from every angle, even the folks that want to talk about sports betting. And what would happen, and how do you figure out who's going to be at what level or what league or whatever they wind up calling that? Who's the bottom 2 or 3 that are coming out next year, and who's the 2 or 3 that are replacing, and can they keep that momentum going? And hey, this team was here, 15 years ago, and they moved up and they've been able to stay, and they're awesome. They've built an empire. Those types of stories are out there for college football, I think. And I don't know if that's something that the power brokers are interested in or looking out. Like I said earlier, if they get the money right, they'll do it.
That's kind of what Tip's been on the relegation
he's a big
idea for a little bit. Is he a big soccer guy?
He grew up playing soccer.
Well, Chuck, man, we appreciate you as always.
You guys. I can't tell you enough how much what you guys do means to all of us here around the Group of Five world, right? And it's a universe, man. It's not a small one. Like there's tons and tons of people that love their school. That want more information, that want more coverage, and you guys are dialing it up every single week. And it's a reason why we're such big fans of you guys here, is because we see the vision for what you guys are doing. I think this is the tip of the iceberg for you guys. There's big stuff coming. And as this thing continues to move with college football and college athletics in general, I think your opportunities are going to just grow bigger and bigger. So appreciate you guys having me on. You guys keep up what you're doing. We love it.
No, you're the best, Chuck. And let people know, any of the Troy fans listening, shout out the collective and where they can get more information about it.
Yeah, Trojans Together Collective.com. Any of your favorite social media outlets, we're there. You can connect with us. The big focus for us is corporate sponsorships. If you're a brand and you need athletes to help you promote your brand, we are for you. If you've got other ways that you'd like to get involved with college athletics and funding people and programs, you can have that conversation with us too. My background's in college athletics years and years ago now, but on the fundraising side, we have conversations with folks all the time about where's your heart beating. Is it beating for corporate sponsorship money? Is it beating for a private donation? Is that donation for people, or would you rather go towards travel and buildings and shoulder pads and socks, right? Where's your heart beating? And we want to help people find that right place. We think that's the best role for a collective in this environment, is being able to be a place where people can come with questions, get really good answers, and not feel like they're being shuffled a specific direction. And we feel like they're being heard. Where's my heart beating for my program? I want to be a helper. Where do I go? And a collective is a great place to get started.
Well, you guys are one of the first collectives for sure in the Group of Five. Definitely one of the ones that's been doing it right. Thanks, man. We'll see you soon. Hopefully, we'll see you soon in maybe a couple weeks. So,
all right, guys. Thanks a lot,
Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, what we need is like an organization, maybe like a couple of really smart business people, like very efficient people that could go in and take a deep dive into these universities and their spending habits, maybe cut some things out. You could call it, I mean, I don't know, off the top of my head, like Department of University Efficiency or something like that might be good. That's what we really need. I mean, and then maybe we could get some refunds for what we've been donating over the years.
No question. I mean, transparency, Chuck talked about it. I mean, I think that's the key to it all. If you can be transparent with your plan, where the money's going, what it's being used for, I mean, fans are going to feel a lot more secure in giving and want to give more, especially when they can see directly where it's going, right? So, who knows where college football is headed? It seems like it's headed in one direction, but as we know, it can go a bunch of different ones. But I'm just glad that we do have, we've come across a handful of them, and Chuck being one of them, who runs the collective at Troy, just a good person, is doing it for the right reasons. And I'm glad that we have people like Chuck. It really is a resource for us to get.
Yeah.
Because he stays on top of all this stuff. He has to, in order to be the best at running the collective and being transparent with their donors. Like, he's on top of it, man. There'll be a bunch of times where I'll be like, hey, Chuck, what do you think about this? Give me an answer. So shout out to Chuck and all that he's done for Troy and their athletes and just really doing it the right way and being a resource for us.
Yeah, it's good that we have good people on the side of the players because, as we know, we kind of talked about it a little bit, not a ton, but we definitely have some bad apples that are taking advantage of this situation. But shout out to Chuck, man, and shout out to the Carson family. They've always been great to us, so definitely appreciate them. But there's still so many unknowns, Jeff, in this whole thing, and we'll see what happens with the House settlement and all that stuff, and it's going to be more changes.
Yeah.
Eventually, it'll get eventually, we'll have whatever rules and regulations they're going to have. Eventually, they'll be in place, and they'll be understood.
Yeah.
Understood. What did I say? Understand it. Good God Almighty! It's getting late. They'll be understood by the layman's like myself, but until that time, it's just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, we'll see what direction it heads, but hopefully we get some regulations on it. That's what we need, and we got some coming in July. We'll see if that makes a difference. But you gotta get the transfer portal under control. Fix the windows. Have some accountability, and I think the rest will kind of take care of itself. I love the idea of, if a kid's going to transfer, here's his deal on one side. It's really like a 2-page document, because that's what the players need to know. What's the real dollar amount at the end of the day that I'm basically sacrificing? Because on one end they are offering you $200K where you're getting $50K at a group of 5 school as opposed to P4. But if you're changing states, it's, what I'm saying, with state income taxes, the agent fees, all of it, you can be making a big decision for literally like $20,000.
Well, and you think about it, if you're looking for a job, right? Are you going to go change jobs? And let's say you have your base salary. Let's say you're getting $100,000 from one job. Let's say your other job is whatever, $115,000, and you're thinking, oh my God, what a huge boost in the salary. But the company paying you $100,000 is a big company. They pay less for insurance, so you're paying less for insurance. Your benefits are better. Maybe you got a car stipend. Maybe they pay for your fuel. So you gotta weigh these things out and put them side by side. And then, I know they're getting, half of them are getting penthouses and all this stuff, but cost of living is a big thing now. That is a big thing, I mean, hell, you're getting, let's say you got $20,000 in NIL at Troy versus like $100,000 in NIL in Los Angeles. Hey, buddy, you're better off being, that $20,000 is going a long way in Troy, Alabama.
No question.
But anyway, again, we appreciate Chuck from coming on. We appreciate you guys for watching and listening. Make sure you check us out live every Monday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you hit the follow button on all the social platforms at Group of Five Guys. Go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your best podcasts. Subscribe, like, review, and share it with your family and friends. Have a good rest of the week. We'll